Welcome to the Strand bookstore. Thank you all for being here. I'm Jessica Strand, the events director, and no, I am not related to the Strand bookstore in that way. It's the Bass family that owns this store. And tonight we're here to discuss the 85th Academy Awards and all its glitz and glory, and of course all the oversights that we feel are unfair, and the picks that we applaud. This evening, Deborah Reinisch will moderate. Deborah is a producer-director who received an Emmy and a National Board of Review Award for producing Andre's Mother. She joined the faculty at Tisch School in 2010. Peter Travers is the film critic for Rolling Stone magazine. He also has been the film critic for People. Peter hosts Popcorn with Peter Travers on ABC Now. Michael Musto writes the weekly gossip column La Dolce Musto for The Village Voice. Musto is the author of 4 books, including Fork on the Left and Knife in the Back. And Dana Stevens is a film critic for Slate magazine and is a regular on the magazine's podcast, Culture Gabfest. I just have to take a breath. And Andrew O'Hare is a senior editor and a lead film critic for Salon.com. He has also written for the New York Times and the Washington Post. Please join me in welcoming our Oscar panel. Thank you very much.
Okay, can you guys hear me? All right. First of all, thank you all for coming. I see some of you from last year, which is very exciting. And I want to thank our panelists for coming. I'm very excited to hear what you guys have to say. I want to start with some statistics to give everybody, to give everybody some background, which is when we're talking about the people who nominate for who nominate and vote for the award, so you can decide how happy or disappointed you are with their decisions. There are about 6,000 members of the Academy, all of whom vote for the final awards. Apart from Best Pictures, the Best Picture Award, all the nominations are by Academy branch, and there are 15 branches of the Academy. So in terms of nomination, actors nominate actors, directors nominate directors, and so on. But here's what's essential to keep in mind. This was a study that was published last year, which I think is fascinating, so that you know what the average makeup of the Academy is, who's doing this voting for you. The average age of the Academy member is 62 years old. Only 14% of the members are under 50. So that gives you a sense right away who these 6,000 people are. 94% of the Academy are white, 77% are men, 2% are black, and less than 2% are Latino. That said, each year more and more young members are admitted, and also more foreign directors and Academy members from other countries. Okay, so last year we talked about that in the 1980s and 1990s, the Best Picture winners were almost always amongst the top 20 grossing films of that year. By the 2000s, more than a third of the winners were not in the top 20. Last year, only one nominated film was amongst the top 20, and that was The Help, which did not win. This year, quite differently, 3 of the nominated films are in the top 20 grossing films of the year: Lincoln, Les Mis, and Django. And if we go to the top 35 movies, then we get Argo, Life of Pi, Silver Linings, and Zero Dark 30. And if we look at the international grosses, this is astonishing to me. Other than Amour and Beasts, all of the films grossed over $100 million, if you take in the international. So even Zero Dark, and you know that Catherine Bigelow has the honor of having directed the movie that had the Best Picture that had the single lowest gross ever in Academy history. So setting aside for now whatever films and filmmakers that have been overlooked by the Academy, what do we have to celebrate about the movies in 2012 and how they're reflected in the Oscar nominations?
Well, I think there's more good ones than bad ones. That's always a thing to celebrate. This is the kind of year where you would look at what was out there to see, and I would say 3 out of your 5 choices are going to turn out pretty well. And that's kind of a miracle. We didn't have that last year.
No. Who else? It's astonishing.
Well, there's the Oscar recognition of some movies that in another year I would have been very surprised that Academy voters would even put into their DVD players and watch, like Amour,
Yeah.
which doesn't only get recognized for Best Foreign Film, which was maybe predictable, but for Best Screenplay, Best Director, and Acting Award. It seems like that got a lot of recognition across the board, which even if it doesn't win anything, I think is still something good.
Yeah, I'm inclined to say that I certainly agree with Peter that in some years, we feel in this position and frankly pretty depressed about the Academy, which you have to look at as a promotional organization. It's a trade group. Their job is not really to pick the best film of the year. They may call it that. It's the film that presents the film industry in the most favorable light. And it's always nice when those two things can converge a little bit and we actually have some good movies to talk about. And I think what you spoke about earlier, Debbie, about the very slowly changing demographics of the Academy, we can talk more about that, but I think we're beginning to see the focus of the Academy shift away from the kinds of films that they honored for many, many years towards a more interesting mix.
I feel like at least 3 of the top 9 that are nominated for Best Picture are self-congratulatory political films about great transitional moments in history. Lincoln is about the freeing of the slaves. Argo is about the freeing of hostages from Iran. And Zero Dark 30 is about the search for bin Laden. And I think something in the air makes movie land want to congratulate us and make us feel better on things that went well in history, because we're in such a dark period right now. I think obviously Argo is going all the way, partly because people really like it, and I had said for months Lincoln was going all the way, but there isn't a lot of sexual excitement about Lincoln. You don't get wet watching it. I don't know what that means. but people get passionate about Argo. Combine that with the fact that it makes Hollywood look good, which Hollywood loves. Even though it's satirical about Hollywood, it also shows them collaborating with the CIA on this incredible mission. And in addition to that, there's an incredible wave of sympathy for Ben Affleck because he was snubbed as a Best Director nominee by the Oscars. Ever since that happened, he won Golden Globe, Critics' Choice, Producers Guild, SAG. It's going all the way, and I think Oscar night is going to be a big love fest for Ben Affleck.
Okay, well, we're going to get your thoughts on that later, so hang on, and I hope everybody has a ballot, because everybody's going to have a chance to vote as well. Okay, all right, well then, now that's the good news. Now we're going to take a moment, and we're going to look at the bad news. Each of you has written about serious snubs this year in the Academy nominations, particularly in the directing category, but in many of them. So perhaps Peter put it most succinctly when he said, and I quote, "Damn you, Oscars," followed by the words ignorance, sexism, and stupidity. So Peter, will you start us out and talk about the most egregious snubs this year in terms of nominations, in any category?
Well, that'll be the rest of the night. I could start with the fact that The Master seems to be a movie that has 3 of the great performances of the year which are nominated in it, that they can look at it as something. They have 9 nominees for Best Picture. They could have had 10, and they choose not to put that there. So whatever that movie did to them, it just pissed them off royally. And I think that's a sign of a good movie. I think them ignoring it, because what Argo is it's like petting them like a little puppy and saying, this is the way movies should be. We win in the end. It's good. Everybody's nice. Hollywood is perfect for us. And then to say Catherine Bigelow isn't worthy of being nominated as Best Director, because to me their thinking is, and that's where the sexism comes in, they gave her an Oscar. So a woman has won an Oscar for directing, so come back in 80 years and let's give another woman one of those things. That's just, it's just irritating when that happens. The same could be with Quentin Tarantino. If Django is the Best Picture, if it's nominated as Best Script, who did it? Yeah. And these directors, whether you like or really don't like their movies, they have personalities. My kind of movie is a movie where I look at it and I say, that movie was done by this particular individual. And when I look at Argo, I say, that was fun, but I don't see any signature in it. I saw more of a signature in The Town and in Gone Baby Gone for Ben Affleck.
Cool.
I don't know if I agree with you that I don't know if you can really see sexism as the reason that Catherine Bigelow wasn't nominated. It just seems like a reach. I mean, if the Academy's so self-congratulatory and they're always sort of trying to have, token representatives, it just seems like she would at least be nominated even if it wasn't taken seriously. It just seems like it was more the controversy that tainted that film, the political controversy, that made people back away from it.
it seemed like every day in the press, Catherine Bigelow had to defend the film. And that cost her the nomination. It's bizarre because it's nominated for screenplay, and the waterboarding was the screenplay. It wasn't Catherine Bigelow. She just directed the screenplay. And
she and Mark Boal, the screenwriter, were also extremely unpolitical. I mean, unpolitical in the Oscar campaign sense, in the way that they handled the publicity for that film, right? It just seemed like they were always going around trying to have it both ways, to say this is a piece of journalistic reporting, we've got these CIA sources that nobody else has, but also to say it's fiction, and we have the leverage of compression or embellishment or whatever they did to the story.
But I found the controversy a little ludicrous because the CIA never denied that there was waterboarding. Their response to it was, well, we're not sure of the extent of how the waterboarding may have led to whatever information. It was a very half-hearted, angry response. I think she was right on the money, Bigelow, and I think she was very bold to include it. And she's certainly not endorsing waterboarding as a form of getting information. She was presenting it. I actually am not that upset about the quote snubs in the directorial category, because they went for really esoteric, brilliant films like Amour and Beasts of the Southern Wild. It's not like they dumped Bigelow and Affleck for like Transformers. Right. They went even artier and went for true art house classics, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting year in that way. I kind of am on Michael's team here in that I am absolutely delighted to see Mikhail Haneke, one of the great figures in global cinema, who I never, ever, ever thought would be nominated for an Oscar for anything, getting multiple nominations for a film this year. Ben Zeitlin, a very interesting young filmmaker with his first film collaboratively made in New Orleans, completely off the Hollywood map, getting a Best Director nomination. Those are great things. At the same time, I do feel like the exclusion of Catherine Bigelow this year is a very unfortunate example of the kinds of weird mistakes that can come up in Oscar season. I think that even people who don't like the film or who argue, in my view, incorrectly, that it justifies the use of torture, would have to look at it and say this is a remarkably well-directed and ambitious work of cinema, a very dark and disturbing film. I think that is really the problem. That film messed with people's heads, and I don't think I think it was widely misinterpreted, but that's an interpretation. And I agree with Dana, by the way. I think that they did not play good politics. I'm virtually 100% confident that if Bigelow and Boal could walk back some of the early comments that they made about the film, they would do that today. But I think the omission of her as a director this year is one of those things that people are going to look back at in 15 years and go, what was going on in 2012 that they didn't nominate her for that movie?
Anything in other categories besides directing? Any of the performances that were snubbed?
I felt in supporting actor, Matthew McConaughey was the best supporting actor of the year for Magic Mike. Am I the only one?
Oh, yeah.
I am the only one.
I'd love to see him on that roster. Absolutely.
And I hate to tout a gay villain, because my whole life I've been screaming, stop with the gay villains. Javier Bardem, I thought, was brilliant in Skyfall.
Okay.
And they both got snubbed, and I think of the 5 that are nominated, Philip Seymour Hoffman is by far the most brilliant. But Peter, you said people have something against The Master. It didn't make money. That's what they have against The Master. And it also divides people.
Yeah, The Master is just not the kind of movie that gets Oscar nominations. I feel like you can see that from the moment you sit down to it. And it was specifically in the areas that I think it's the most impressive, the craft arena, the cinematography, the music from The Master were all snubbed, but that was completely foreseeable.
Okay, then let's pick up with Catherine Bigelow and so on, and take that a little bit farther. Maureen Dowd wrote on Saturday of her pet peeve about filmmakers who make up facts in stories about real people to add drama, in pointing out that in Argo, Jimmy Carter's chief of staff, Hamilton Jordan, had neither a wife nor children when his character received a phone call from a CIA agent pretending to call from the children's school. He had no children, but so Dowd wrote in talking about this, and there are other examples in Argo, particularly the chase at the end on the runway, which apparently never took place. She wrote, quote, Hollywood wants it both ways, of course, but this year's Oscars season is rife with contenders who bank on the authenticity of their films until it's challenged, and then fall back on, hey, it's just a movie defense. All right, so is this controversy over authenticity in films like Zero Dark 30, Lincoln, Django, and Argo just Hollywood being Hollywood? Or have these filmmakers crossed a line? And what does this tell us about our nation in this era of what Stephen Colbert would call truthiness?
Truthiness. I think that, I mean, they're going to tell me now that Scarlett O'Hara did not plant her own potatoes, and I'm going to be really upset. I don't really care whether the guy had kids or not, you know.
Yeah.
That's not germane to it. But when you look at a movie like Argo, it does say, well, it wasn't a really suspenseful story, so we made it up. Just like the movie is about Hollywood coming in to make it up. Given the quality of that movie, I find that objection to it really ridiculous. It just doesn't play with me. In terms of Zero Dark 30, if the politicians that had the problems with it had actually watched it, I think they could see that it isn't for waterboarding. It just doesn't say that. I interviewed Catherine Bigelow, and I said, early in the game, and I said, why didn't you just come up and say that? And she said, I started in the art world. The art world it's who I am, and you don't ever explain what you do in the art world. In fact, you would obfuscate. You would say, it isn't what I've created on that canvas. And it cost her in terms of doing that. But I don't think that movie is really lying either. The people in Connecticut, if they don't want to vote for Lincoln because those guys all voted aye, then so be it. Connecticut,
Does everyone know
I feel for
that
you.
controversy?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, in Connecticut, in the movie, in Tony Kushner's script, the Connecticut delegation, at least two of them, vote no to passing the amendment that would abolish slavery. But in fact, the four of them actually did vote yay to doing that. So they're quite upset about that. And right now, Tony Kushner is saying, well, it was more dramatic. Spielberg really liked it that way. You know, I don't know how that changes or why that was even done, but I could see the objection. Does that have anything to do with what Lincoln is saying as a whole? I don't think so.
Who else?
Well, there's something called poetic license when you shape a real story into a movie, but I think that's pretty appalling to literally change the vote in the movie, and I totally understand the pressure for Spielberg to change it for the DVD, which he's not going to do before the Oscars, because that would be an admission of wrongdoing.
But are there limits to what an appropriate, I mean, for example, how did you feel about Argo?
Well, I was going to add one interesting footnote. The problem was that Connecticut was at the time the first state going in alphabetical order. And they believed, writing the screenplay, that was how votes were called in the 19th century. They called states delegations all at one time. That turns out not to be true. They actually called it the congressional representatives in alphabetical order, irrespective of what state they were from. So they got stuck with this detail in the script that Connecticut was supposed to come first, and they wanted 2 no votes to come first. So part of the reason that they're not going to change it is because they'd have to reorder things a little bit or make it seem different. No other state can be made to come in the alphabet ahead of Connecticut that existed in 1864. But in Argo, to me, you know, and Peter said something like this earlier, the problem with Argo, to me, I don't really mind so much any of the individual things that they changed, but the entire third act of the movie is just made up. And the purpose of doing that was to create essentially an ideological film that did not appear to be ideological, that is just this very reassuring, very conventional thriller in which the good guys win, and it's very exciting, and these crazy people with Kalashnikovs are chasing you, and beards are chasing you down the runway, and it felt really phony to me in a way that wasn't about the facts. It was about it being a very familiar kind of thriller. I don't think it's a bad movie, but to me it's kind of a mediocre movie.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that's fine until it starts getting all this recognition, and then it gets really annoying. You know, I think that's what happened with The Artist last year when we were here having the same conversation. Everybody was sort of saying, who doesn't like The Artist? It's perfectly fine, but it's a trifle. And, you know, to see it suddenly taking all these big awards, even if you're one of those people who tries to not invest in the awards, it's just aggravating.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody else on this topic, these controversies? All right, then I'm going to widen it a little bit more. It's something that Michael started with, but I think taking into all the films that have been nominated for Best Picture, but also whether controversial or not, and bringing in also the films that have been nominated in the writing category, and looking at that, are there themes that run through this year's films that express or respond to our national mood, other than what's annoying about the films coming to the fore? I mean, last year we had some films that were in a kind of a dark year. We had some films that were surprisingly hopeful, even though they were about very different things. You know, something like Hugo. And so are there themes this year that express where we are as a country right now? preoccupations?
Well, I mean, Michael said it earlier. There are these films that appear to have political themes that seem to be in different ways designed to provide some reassuring evidence about maybe not exactly the fundamental goodness of America. I don't know if you can watch Zero Dark 30 and come away with that exactly, but the competence of America.
Yeah.
And when was the last time we had two movies, let alone two Oscar-nominated movies, in which the heroes are CIA agents? That's, you know.
And it's not Claire Danes.
Yeah,
That's right.
You know, it's so to me, there's this strong, somewhat confusing component of political ideology here. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also the love of political process and kind of judicial process in a lot of these movies, Lincoln being the most obvious example. But it seems like the fact that, I mean, Lincoln was released the week of the election, the presidential election. It seems like that was very carefully timed to sort of, you know, give the movie that kind of resonance.
Yeah.
Lincoln also, by the way, lost a lot of momentum when Spielberg got Bill Clinton to present it at the Golden Globes, and people thought I thought it was a great stroke of whatever, but people thought it was just a little too smug. Though after Jodie Foster's speech, everything before it was forgotten.
Yes, it really was. Peter, any thoughts?
I think it's more than a mood. When you're talking about Oscar movies, there always has to be this sense of hope. So that even in a movie we haven't mentioned because it's not political, a Silver Linings Playbook, it kind of says, and I basically enjoy this movie, but it does sort of say that if you're bipolar but you find love, it's going to be okay. And I don't know. Can we buy that? Life of Pi kind of says, yes, it's every religion is good. And so if we find God in everything, we're going to be happy. And I think that's what the Academy likes to embrace. Politically, it's always better when it's distant. So the only political movie to me that makes it seem like it's not far away is Django Unchained. It says, as crazy as it is, it says, here's how I'm going to solve the issue of slavery. I'm going to kill everybody that was for it. I'm just going to blow them away through a genre movie like that is. And that made you think, okay, this is what he's doing now in the present. But Argo takes a safe distance, Lincoln takes a safe distance, and that's usually what the Academy likes.
And Les Mis.
Well, Les Mis is, I'm sorry, Anne Hathaway broke my heart, so. No.
Okay.
But I wanted to be perceived as a person whose heart would be broken.
Well, I mean, Beasts has an element to it, which is we are all a tiny part of something very large that's bigger than us.
That's just a great movie to me. That's just a completely, what Andrew said before is like, it's shocking. It's shocking that they would go and choose it. If they chose it because they were hating the master or didn't, I don't care why. They did it, and they did the good thing that Oscars can sometimes do, which is call attention to something people didn't know about. And if you can see that, or you go to see it more because you see it got a couple of Oscar nominations, then I'm all for it.
Yeah. All right, well, let's depart from that then. And I did happen to notice in doing my research that a number of you are divided on Beasts and Argo, and particularly The Master, all of which we've talked about. So last year, both our critics and our audience felt that Tree of Life was the takeaway movie of last year. That was the movie that we were going to be, even though it was polarizing certainly and controversial, that's the movie we were going to keep talking about from 2011. That's the one we'd come back to year after year. So what's the movie or movies this year with that kind of lasting power to push cinema forward for the future?
Well, I think it's The Master. And of course, it's not one of the movies nominated. I think Paul Thomas Anderson is that kind of filmmaker, that whether you love him or hate him, you are going to be looking at these movies as time goes by. You're going to see how they fit together. You're going to see and be eager to see what he does next. I just think it makes me hopeful about what movies are. And so I've seen that movie now 3 times. My wife has tried to stop me from seeing it a 4th because I do want to start a cult of my own. But the fact is that one is the one that got me, that I think will live on. I'm not going to watch Argo a 2nd time. Sorry.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Who's next?
I think The Master is mine too. Probably that and Zero Dark 30 seem like movies that will have something to say to us still in a decade.
I hate to echo that, but I think the Master, it's funny, I'm cooler on it than the other people on this panel. I was, if you go back and read my review, it's somewhat mixed, and I felt a little baffled and confused and not necessarily emotionally engaged by the film. At the same time, I respected that greatly, and the fact that in many ways, like Tree of Life, it's a film that resembles a work of visual art or a symphony more than it resembles a conventional movie, made me feel like I absolutely need to see this again, probably multiple times, to try to get my own sense of it. And I think I feel that about Zero Dark 32 in a much different direction. It obviously, affects you in a different way. But yeah, I think that it's hard to look at the rest of the nominees this year and feel like there's anything I have watched Argo 3 times now, and it got worse.
So why do you keep
know.
on watching it?
Thank you.
I wanted to pick it apart a little bit. There actually is a shot at the end of the film. It's like my point about it being in some ways a propaganda film. The last time you see Ben Affleck in the movie, pretty much, is the homecoming scene. He's framed in the doorway, hugging the blonde with the American flag going whop, whop, whop behind him in the rectangle. I'm like, okay, that was the whole idea here all along. So.
Right. Interesting. Michael.
I admired Zero Dark 30, but it's a very dry documentary-like film. It's not a good date movie. Yeah. It's really long.
Right.
Argo, I just thought was a competent film. I didn't think it was inspired in any way. And when I found out about the made-up cab chase, that was all, baloney. The Master, I agree, was one of the 2 takeaway films because it hits you on a visceral level, as does Beasts of the Southern Wild, my other takeaway film. I didn't care for the oversized rabbits running around. I thought when it got a little phantasmagorical, it kind of lost step a bit. But the performance by Convention Wallace, and I'm so proud that I can say that, was extraordinary. I would love her to tie with Emmanuel Riva.
Yes.
And have the youngest and oldest Best Actress tie. It's not going to happen.
All right. Okay. Well, then let's take a moment then and move to talk about the acting awards. And so we are. And this year there really are several very interesting situations to look at. One being that there seems to be an undeniable consensus that Daniel Day-Lewis, his performance in Lincoln was the greatest achievement in terms of performance, in terms of acting this year. So there tends to be a lock, I think, in expectation for him for Best Actor. We also have, as Michael alluded to, the contest for the Best Actress category, which is adorable. It's the oldest actor, period, ever nominated, and the youngest. Emmanuel Riva is 85 today, but on the Oscars she will be turning 86. So if she wins, it would be really fun if the Academy all sang happy birthday to her. And say it for me, Michael.
Convention Wallace.
The youngest, who was 6 when she was in Beast and is now 9. And then we also have in the Best Supporting Actor category 5 actors who've already won Oscars, which I think is unusual and worth noting. So I'd like each of you to take as much time as you want, because you can talk about each category. We're not going to go through them, so please do. And talk about the performances that stand out for each of you this season and why.
Daniel Day-Lewis is a lock, as you said, for Best Actor. I mean, he humanized Abe Lincoln. He went beneath the prosthetics and created a person and made him dignified and likable and flawed and somebody you'd want to be around, a good storyteller, somebody with even a sense of humor. He will be the first actor to ever get 3 Best Actor awards from the Oscars, though, of course, Katharine Hepburn could say, well, I got 4 Best Actresses, so what? Okay? But she's not around. Right. For actress, I think it's a close race between Jennifer Lawrence for Silver Linings Playbook, which I agree has been marketed as a serious film about mental illness, which is a joke. It is a formula rom-com with some edge to it, and I liked it. I thought it was very edgy and surprising and witty, and I thought she was extraordinary. And Jessica Chastain, but I think Jessica might suffer from the backlash against Zero Dark 30. Also, her character only has one Oscar-type scene where she screams, I'm the motherfucker who found this place. Right. You need outbursts to get an Oscar, and Jennifer Lawrence has that, as well as comedic scenes, as well as dancing.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the climax is like Dancing with the Stars. And she also has somebody named Harvey Weinstein behind her.
That's very
who last year got The Artist Best Picture, Meryl Streep Best Actress, he gets Oscars.
Right. Okay, who else? Stand-up performance.
Very depressed now. I don't know why that depressed me. The Dancing with the Stars reference.
You didn't see it?
That was it. That was it. No, I was there. It all came together as a very sad thing to me. I think, yes, Daniel Day-Lewis is that lock. Also, he is a great actor, so we can't argue about that. He's got a great script in Lincoln, and he does a lot with it. We didn't bring that up, but I think what's going to happen in terms of the writing awards is that Tony Kushner, who wrote, I think, the best screenplay adapted from anything, despite what he did to Connecticut, is going to lose to Chris Terrio, who wrote Argo, and that is one of those little shames. Yes, that's going to happen. You know, yes. Put the quarter down. Okay. You know, that's it. It's definitely going to happen. I think that Joaquin Phoenix in The Master gave the kind of performance that Daniel Day-Lewis would give. And that at some award show that Daniel had won, he gave Joaquin a shout out and wished he was with him. I think too many people believe that Joaquin was playing himself in The Master, and therefore he won't win that award. Whoa.
Oh, come on.
Is that Joaquin? What is that?
Wow.
Whoa.
It's just a surprise.
I don't know.
Okay. We'll take a small break. No. Can you?
It felt like a validation for me. I kind of liked it. I can do my, and I dreamed a dream of days gone by. Yes.
It's also a little bit of a disco ball effect. We could do the closing.
I really like it. All right. All right, I think that
just keep going.
I'm going to keep going.
Yeah,
I'm going to play through. This is not going to defeat me.
Woo! They're trying to play you off.
They are. It feels like that on Oscar night, doesn't it? I'm sorry, I have to thank my agent.
Like Julia Roberts.
Yes.
It's sort of like they're playing the music.
And Shad Lowe.
Yeah.
Right. We all have to thank
Harvey's
him.
trying to shut you up, Peter. That's what you're doing.
This is not going to be.
Defending the Master.
It's not going to be a Harvey year.
This is Harvey, yeah.
Well, Jennifer Lawrence, maybe.
Maybe. I agree with Michael about Jennifer Lawrence being the favorite, but I still think Emmanuel Riva is going to pull off this surprise for her birthday.
Okay.
Oh, wouldn't that be
I think they love Amour. They showed that they loved it by Best Picture, Best Screenplay, Best Director. Foreign language film, I don't think is going to be enough. They're going to want to say a little bit more.
Also, I don't know how much this calculation enters in anymore. Maybe it's not the case. Andrew was arguing that it's not the case anymore, that it always goes to the oldest, most established person, but it is probably Riva's last chance to win an Oscar, and she's a legend in French cinema. And Jennifer Lawrence, although she clearly essentially became a movie star this year with Silver Linings Playbook, and she's great in it, has so many years ahead of her to get other great roles and win other Oscars.
I would like to believe that Emmanuel Riva will win. I'm not totally convinced by this argument yet. I am slightly concerned by what appears to be a real triumph of cuteness in the actress category this year. If we get both Jennifer Lawrence and Anne Hathaway being crowned as the two biggest female stars, that's a real serious dose of sugar. Right there. Now I liked them. But I mean, whatever. What can you say about Anne Hathaway? That was a very canned Oscar moment that was pulled off beautifully, and it's probably going to deliver. I really do think that the Joaquin Phoenix thing. It's great that he was nominated, and that's just not a performance that's going to triumph. When you have one of the greatest screen actors of our generation or any generation playing Abe Lincoln, and as Michael said, making him seem like a real person what was astonishing to me about that performance is like, there are no videos of Abe Lincoln. We don't know how he talked and walked, but you saw Day-Lewis doing that part, and you're like, of course. That's exactly how Lincoln talks. I knew that already.
And I was terrified that he was going to chew the scenery, because frankly, there are times when he really makes my skin crawl. Gangs of New York, which he won a claim for, I thought there was no scenery left by the end. Can we wait maybe till this siren is over?
Well, I was going to ask you since we are stuck a little bit, is this going to...
It's downstairs. We've been replacing the windows, so I have everybody on it. So
Okay, thank you. All right, then I'm going to ask a question that's more worthy of this kind of interruption as opposed to one of our meteor questions.
Excellent.
In terms of performance and in terms of the overall effect, was it worth it? Was it a valuable choice for all the actors in Les Mis to sing live rather than pre-records as in prior musicals. You know, in all of the musicals, they would sing in the studio, they'd have it in their ear, and they'd lip sync on camera so that you got a performance, but you also got good quality. Was it worth it in that movie?
For everyone but Russell Crowe.
Okay.
Yes, right. I think it was worth it. For him, I think it's been humiliating that everybody that's written about it kept saying, "Whoa, what was that?"
Yeah.
He needed help to do that.
Okay.
But that was the exciting element of the movie to me, that it was live.
Okay.
All the musicals are so canned; they just look like they're going to be put in a box somewhere. And this was something else.
I feel bad for Russell Crowe that he became the scapegoat of the terribleness of Les Miserables. I mean, his singing is not great. His singing is like singing in the shower level of okay.
Right.
And he actually sings with rock bands, I think, in Australia. He can carry a tune. But the movie is bad for so many reasons that have nothing to do with him.
Yes. Okay, but we're talking about performance now. Was there a value to it in terms of performance? Andrew, Michael?
I have a sort of a perverse admiration for that movie. It feels like an Andy Kaufman artistic experiment to me. It's like performance art or something. It's something that nobody would have been able to do if it wasn't, a guy who with an Oscar-winning director who had this bizarre idea. So
Yeah.
I think I agree that it's basically a terrible film, but I went in the course of watching that movie, I went through moments of delight and moments of absolute excruciating pain.
Yeah.
And you don't experience that very often.
Right. Michael, your thoughts?
I loved it. I loved it, but I'm gay. And I thought the live singing worked because it did bring an immediacy to the numbers. Unfortunately, there were too many numbers. They were all done in muddy, crying close-up.
Yeah.
So it became relentless after a while. But you could never record a crying number like Anne Hathaway did and then lip sync to that.
Right.
Because when was snot coming down my nose? When was I crying? When was it?
Right.
It's such a emotional, yay!
Whoa.
So Anne Hathaway wins. You talked about her last.
I do think.
Okay, so let me finish Andrew's thoughts on what the Oscars are. The Oscars are a defining pseudo-event of our time, a self-promotional industry trade show we all agree to invest with larger cultural meaning. So what then is the value of an Academy Award, and why do we remain so fascinated by the Oscars?
It's the Gay Olympics, first of all. It's a reunion. It's a chance for everyone to schmooze. It gets ratings. People care. And there's something really wonderful about watching 4 people lose in every category.
Okay.
That appeals to the very dark side of human nature. But at the same time, we get to see somebody triumph, whether it be a new person like maybe a Jennifer Lawrence or an old pro like a Meryl Streep getting her due. She didn't get an award for 29 years. It's just a feel-good moment that adds a glow to the movie world and also adds to the box office, which is the main value of it.
I just think it's the Hunger Games. I think it's the same thing. And that's why the Hunger Games is such a hit. We get to watch everybody go to battle and pretend that they all love each other for months. This nominating thing goes on, and they go to award ceremonies, and Anne Hathaway says, "Sally Field, I love you. You're the best. Just to be in your category is enough." And then when they lose, we get to see those close-ups of everyone suffer. So it's pretty much the same thing, except they don't starve.
Okay.
Except for Anne Hathaway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. How about you?
I think the fascinating thing about the Oscars is that it brings all of those cultural fields kind of together. What's fascinating about the Oscars is rarely who's going to win what, or what kind of chicanery is going on behind the scenes with Harvey Weinstein. It's sort of that there's this yearly event that's a combination sporting event, right, and a fashion event and a theatrical spectacle, and it's also a moment where the fields of art and commerce coincide and overlap and struggle with each other. And it is true that it's a trade show, for sure, but at the same time, there's so many competing visions of what the Oscars must be within the Oscars, right? I mean, for the artists receiving awards, it might be, the pinnacle of their professional life. And for the critics, nattering about the awards, it's a huge part of our stock and trade and bread and butter as well. So it's fascinating in that all of those things overlap and converge, and nobody can decide what the Oscars are.
Right.
Yeah, it's such a weird combination of things. You can sort of reach for these grand anthropological ideas, like maybe in the days of yore, we all sat around the fire outside the cave and gave an award to the guy who had killed the most mammoths or something. But that was for a real accomplishment. He killed a bunch of mammoths and fed the tribe. This is a symbolic accomplishment. They made movies. So it's odd to me that way, but I think it does get invested because it's actually meaningless in terms of survival. It's open to interpretation any way you want to interpret it. And then also, one of the things that people have alluded to here, I got an email from a reader the other day who made the very simple point that it's a time when you're reminded that these incredibly famous people are actually human beings with a normal range of human emotional reactions, which is not generally observable. And I think that's a large part of it.
I mean, not to sound too Pollyanna-ish about it, but is there no element of simply acknowledging excellence?
Wow.
Yeah, there's that too. There's that too. Yeah.
I mean,
we like to see these icons brought down. They're being elevated and brought down at the same time. They're competing. Do you know how nervous they are that night? Do you know how rough it is and how awful it is for Sally Field to have to sit there and hear that patronizing thing about, oh, I've loved you my whole life.
Yeah, you really love me. Yeah.
Did you love her? If you hadn't won, if she had won, would you love her that much?
Right. Yeah, but I'm just talking about acknowledging for 5 minutes that all the hooey that goes with films and all the promotion and all the, we were talking about the amount of money spent on these campaigns. I think about $10 million for Argo and Lincoln, followed closely by some of the other films. But it is an opportunity to acknowledge that there's some ambition and some...
But do you think How Green Was My Valley is a better movie than Citizen Kane?
I don't, no. And
well, guess which one won the Oscar?
No, Gary Cooper and Robert Donat beat, yeah, okay. But I'm just saying that...
Red Buttons won for Sayonara.
I understand that. But right now, okay, I'm not going to get anywhere with these guys. All right,
no, but I would say, Deborah, that the idea of acknowledging excellence in the craft of the motion picture arts and sciences is a huge part of how people perceive the Oscars. I'm sure the voters and those who receive and those who watch. Right. It's just that everyone has very different definitions of what excellence is and how to vote for it or campaign for it.
Well, it's certainly true that on the occasions when, The Godfather wins Best Picture, and no one is going to deny that was a film that changed Hollywood and is a great work of cinema that probably will be watched as long as... Those do become landmark moments when, whether it's accidental or not, that something that really does represent a pinnacle of quality gets honored by this event that has a certain randomness to it and all these other things. So, yeah, that plays a role. But I think even the most passionate defender of the Oscars is not going to tell you that they always pick the best movie.
No. Okay.
But it's a time capsule thing.
Yeah.
It genuinely is. And when all of these actors die, it's going to say, if they won, Oscar winner. Right. It's going to have that thing in a parentheses and the movie they won the Oscar for. And they know that. And so they want it to be the good one. They really don't want it to win for Butterfield 8 or some terrible thing that happens like that. I think they're really eager to win for something that they were really good in. Daniel Day-Lewis, he's good in all these three movies, You can't... He's in good shape.
Something else, Dan?
Oh, yeah. No, I just wanted to add that this book that you mentioned that I'm in the middle of reading the Oscars chapter right now, it's called The Economy of Prestige by James English. It's an academic book about awards culture, basically, and it traces awards culture from, the Greek drama festivals through the Nobel Prize, and it's got this great chapter about the Oscars. And one of the points that he makes just really speaks to what you were just saying, which now I've forgotten your point.
What about the...
I'm sorry, just repeat.
The Hunger Games idea of doing this, or just it's a time capsule thing where it's in your obituary.
Right,
you
the
die
time
with
capsule,
it.
the obituary. That was the point that I just wanted to briefly speak to. Is that one of the great points that he makes is that the award, especially the very prestigious award like the Oscar, the Nobel, has this relationship to death, right? That to get an Oscar is to sort of, have something to put on your tombstone. It's something that will be connected to your mortality. For example, old people are more likely to get them because they're closer to death. And once he started pointing this out, I started seeing this everywhere in the discourse about the Oscars. Whether it was, do we give the Oscar to the old person, or is this the Oscar that he'll want to be remembered for? That your mortality is inscribed in the award itself.
Well, I remember reading an article about an interview with Alec Guinness, one of our great actors who had won the best actor for Bridge on the River Kwai. And they were talking about what he felt he was going to be remembered for. And he said, it does not matter about any of that prior work. The first line of my obituary will be Obi-Wan Kenobi, passed away today, so you can just do so much in terms of your obit. All right.
But he was nominated for that.
Sure.
Pardon me? He was only nominated?
No, he was nominated for Star Wars. Yeah.
was.
Yes, I know, but
Didn't win.
yes, that's
No, no, no. But I'm saying.
All right, one last question, and then I'm going to ask you guys, or we're just going to vote. And that is, I wanted to ask you, first of all, how many of you are going to watch the show on Sunday night? Anybody not going to watch? That's my husband. I understand. Okay, well, just about everybody, and I really did ask all my students the other day, and they're all going to watch, which I think is lovely. You guys really said you wanted to watch. So every year I get invited to Oscar parties. Every year I decline because I watch alone. I take this very seriously. I do not want anybody making fun of me. I don't want it to be a party game. I want to weep when I want to weep. I want to get, weepy at the speeches. I want to get weepy at who died. I like it. So I watch religiously. That said, why is the show so relentlessly terrible? Does it have to be that way? This is your chance to tell us how to fix it, because it is terrible every year. They try.
No, it's because it's geared to be terrible so that we can all have these Oscar parties, and it gives us so much time to just bitch about everything that they've done wrong. If we were interested in all this, it's like the Grammys, it's a real performance show. You just keep watching these musicians perform. Here, we get, Best Animated Short, which is great for everybody, and the families of those people. But we get to sit there and say, do you see what she's wearing?
Yes.
Oh my God. And how did he ever be known? And it starts to get people discussing things about. So I think it's purposely bad.
Okay.
I'd like to believe it's purposely
Anybody else? Michael, you must have.
A lot of the movies are purposely bad too, I guess. But I think the Golden Globes, especially this year, were so riveting that the Oscars should immediately do a complete overhaul, do everything the Golden Globes did. First of all, obviously serve alcohol. Secondly, get Tina and Amy to host.
They were good.
Get rid of Seth and get Tina and Amy. Get rid of all the performances of those horrible Best Song nominees. Add awards for TV. You'll have more celebrities. And get a celebrity to come out in a really pissy way.
Yeah, that was really something, yeah. Okay.
But the Oscars are so bloated, and they have these tributes to obvious things like, oh, My Fair Lady. It's like, who cares? We know about My Fair Lady.
Right.
And they have these long-winded speeches and...
I love the speeches.
And all these Best Animated Short Documentary Foreign Film in 3D categories. No one has seen these films. Why do they have these categories?
All right.
I know you work in film and you help nurture these wonderful works, but why are they on the Oscars?
Right. I mean, the decision of what goes to the sort of governor's ball that has other awards and versus what sticks, they fight over it every year. I would be happy to have some of it reduced.
It's a very mysterious thing, because every year we read exactly the same stories. We hired a new directing and producing team. This year we're going to get it right.
Yeah.
Out with the bloated, fatuous spectacle of the old, in with the daring new, 21st century spectacle of the new.
Yeah.
And it never is any different. They redesign the set. They hire some host that they think is going to appeal to the so-called hip younger generation. Right. And it's always this nightmarish, bloated spectacle where you get 8 minutes and then a block of commercials and 8 minutes. And I suppose the network needs them to stretch it out, because they can get, the longer the show goes, the more ads they can sell.
More ads they can sell, sure.
I think it's hemmed in by tradition and formatting to always be terrible.
Okay, well, on that cheery note, I think then, unless you guys have some questions, we're going to go to asking you to vote. Anybody? Please, Jordan. Both of you.
It seems like it was a very political year as far as politicians chiming in. I know that the president hosted Lincoln at the screen, and John Kerry hosted a screen at Silverman Special Pastors personally that he's considered one of the president of the White House. It seemed like politics and more so to this year's.
Interesting.
Well, I think that we've heard from them more. I mean, certainly they've had to have 3 senators come out and say to the people who made Zero Dark 30, you got it wrong. We didn't do this. We want you to change it. Or people to say to Steven Spielberg, you got Connecticut wrong, change it. Don't give us the movie that you did. That's kind of unprecedented. But politics and show business kind of go together. Everybody in them wants to get elected. They want to stay working. They want to be in that business. But yes, I think there's more of it this year than ever. And I think they like the attention they got by doing it.
Anyone
Yeah,
else?
it does seem unusual in that regard, and I think you mentioned earlier, Peter, that we really don't have any guarantee that the 3 senators who complained about Zero Dark 30 had actually seen it at the time that they wrote that letter. And I also wonder about when you're relying on politicians to tell you what did and didn't happen. Is that necessarily better than relying on the movies? I don't know that I'm going to trust John McCain and Dianne Feinstein to tell me, what information the United States got by torturing people. They have a strong incentive to convince us that they didn't get anything useful at this point. So I think that it's a tortured relationship that's been around for a while. It was really visible this year. That's different. Yeah.
I actually think it's honestly because Oprah is not on the air anymore. Because her endorsement used to be bigger than a political endorsement. If she would have been certainly behind Lincoln and Beasts of the Southern Wild, but she wasn't really around except on her network that nobody watches to do so. So now we relied on, just the president.
Dana, anything?
No, I don't really have anything to add.
All right. Okay, so I think what we'll do now is, what I'm going to ask you to do, when called upon, is to vote. Here's my theme, in terms of excellence, not odds makers, but what you think is the singular achievement in each of these categories. Then we'll ask you guys to weigh in, and you may weigh in on what you think is the most worthy, and also what you think is going to win. How about that? Okay, so we're not going to do everything on here because I think we'd be here all night, but I'd like to start with the screenplays, which we've been talking about obliquely in terms of all the great achievement of the directors and the films themselves. But I'm going to ask you as a show of hands, have a look at the adapted screenplay first. Everybody see that it's Argo, Beasts of the Southern Wild, Life of Pi, Lincoln, and Silver Linings Playbook. And maybe you can help with the names of who these fine people are. But who here feels that the best adapted screenplay is Argo? Whoa.
Ooh, that's chilling.
Interesting. Okay, how about Beasts of the Southern Wild? One. You're very brave. I think that's great. Anybody else? Just the one, okay? Life of Pi. Interesting choice. That's a big 0. Okay. Lincoln. I think it's great. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I think that's about, anybody just add at the end? Did I get you? Okay, then we'll say 18 for that. And now, Silver Linings Playbook. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Big winner is Lincoln for... Okay, how about you guys? Best adapted screenplay?
Yeah, that would be Lincoln for me, too. I mean, not to give that Tony Kushner screenplay the award just seems to render completely meaningless what a good screenplay would be. I mean, I guess it's a very talky screenplay. If you like movies that are all action and no verbiage, then I guess I could imagine voting against that screenplay. But it just accomplishes everything it sets out to do so well. It packs in so much exposition without getting dry and boring. It's witty. It's just verbally playful. What is not to love about the Lincoln script?
And it asks us to think.
Right.
asks us
It's
to
way
think,
more
God forbid.
cognitively demanding than the Argo screenplay, that's for
Right.
sure.
Who else?
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think, Tony Kushner is already basically the greatest dramatist of his generation, and I think he's proving to be his screenplay for Munich, a film that was sort of under-recognized at the time, was also brilliant. The way that he was able to channel 19th century dialogue and make it seem approximately authentic to the period, but not too distant or incomprehensible. That's a very, very difficult thing to pull off.
Yeah. And well played by the actors.
Yeah.
You too?
Oh, I'm totally Lincoln. I just think it's a model of what screenwriting should be that we don't get any other places. That's why I said before, to see that screenplay go down to Argo is even more upsetting than the Best Picture category, where that might
I
happen.
agree, the screenplay for Argo is awful.
Yeah.
And isn't it just sad that we have to hear a Chris Terrio speech instead of a Tony Kushner
Why
speech?
not? Michael?
Well, do you want to know what's going to win?
No, I want to know what you think is the...
But I would go with Beasts because it was so imaginative. There wasn't one word in that screenplay that I could have seen coming where I would have said, oh, here's a father-daughter relationship and this is what's going to happen. Even Amour, which is brilliantly written, you kind of saw the way it was going to go. Lincoln was more of a history lesson, elaborately worked out and quite brilliant, but I would go with Beasts. However, I agree that Argo is going to win. The reason being, not since Broadway Melody has there been a picture that wins Best Picture and doesn't get anything else. It's not going to be one award, Best Picture. I think Argo is going to get screenplay and editing as well as Best Picture. Okay. So they could say 3-time Oscar winner.
Okay. Michael?
Just out of curiosity, do you know what Beasts was adapted from?
A short play that did not take place in New Orleans. It was a short play about a little girl dealing with her father's imminent death and a sense of community. And when Katrina happened, they all started to think about it, and everybody on that, they all went to Wesleyan together, and they moved to New Orleans to help out with Katrina. And they made a short film there, and over time, it took a long time to write that screenplay, it evolved into being about their New Orleans, their Katrina.
So the award, though, I mean, obviously members of the Academy, so it's not as though, one of the reasons things about the Lincoln as an adapted screenplay is that it's from Goodwin's book, which, is so different in tone. It's remarkable to come up with a great narrative, fictional script, non-fiction script. But so the adapted screenplay, no one is thinking about the source material.
Well,
no, I don't think so.
They don't.
No.
It's just a screenplay.
It's just a category.
Just a way of organizing the category.
Yeah, meaning it's not an original idea, it's based on something else. I mean, if you were going to grade who had the most ambitious adaptation, you'd probably have to say Cloud Atlas, that somebody struggled through that and made sense of all those. But yeah, no, it's just the fact that it is based on something else. Okay, so we'll go to the original screenplay. Again, I want to know what you think is the most worthy, not what you think is going to win. Our choices are Amour, Django, Flight, Moonrise Kingdom, and Zero Dark. 30. Who feels Amour was the singular achievement in original screenwriting? 3. You go. Okay, so that's 3. Very good. How about Django? Figure we'll see some hands for there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Very good. Flight. One of my films this year that I thought was underappreciated. I thought he was extraordinary, and I thought the movie was very smart. Yeah. Okay, so for original screenplay, Flight, anybody? Okay. How about Moonrise Kingdom? Hot dog. Okay. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12. And Zero Dark. 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, well, the winner is Moonrise Kingdom from our audience. How do you guys feel?
I'm totally with Moonrise Kingdom as the choice. I just think that what Wes Anderson's doing as a filmmaker and as a screenwriter is extraordinary, and it's subtle. And I can just pull moments of that movie that live in my head, which is always a sign of something. I remember the 2 young people that are in it, and the dog is dead there. And she says, "Was he a good dog?" And the boy says, "Who can say?" I don't know. It just got me. It has like a short story feel to it. It's not appreciated enough by anybody. Yeah. I don't think we're going to see this win the Oscar, but that's my personal thing. I think Django will win the Oscar.
Okay, you think Django will win?
Yeah.
Michael?
I agree. Moonrise was a beautifully written movie that was just short of being fey. It was just the right tone of deadpan and wry and witty. When you get into a movie about 2 kids falling in love, it could be quiz making, But he did a brilliant job of pulling it off with all the characters, not just the kids. Flight was also a great screenplay because your loyalties kept shifting. It's like you want him to get busted because he's flying the plane on drugs, but yet you want him to get off because he saved all those lives, and Denzel Washington can't help but be sympathetic, except in Training Day, where he won the Oscar. So through the movie, you keep shifting your point of view, and that's a brilliant feat by the screenwriter. But I would go with Moonrise, and I feel especially bad that it was snubbed for a Best Picture nomination. And I think that would have gotten the 10th nomination, not the Master, probably, if they had gone for 10.
Interesting. Dana?
I'm ambivalent about Moonrise Kingdom. I think it was a little bit overpraised, if anything, even though it's so much fun when you're watching it. The music is fantastic. I listen to the soundtrack all the time, and the look of it is amazing. And all those things that Wes Anderson can do, he does very well in that movie. But it would be a whole conversation about Wes Anderson that I can't go into. There's some kind of sentimentality. It does cross the line into Faye and Queeze making for me a little bit, especially the relationship between the two kids, who I didn't really think could act very well and couldn't really utter that kind of wry Wes Anderson dialogue the way some of his ensemble members can, the way an Ed Norton can, or a
Bill Murray.
Yeah, Bill Murray. Even Bruce Willis really got on the page of the Wes Anderson deadpan, but I didn't think the kids quite got it.
Whose character name is Social Services.
All right, so Dana, what's the best screenplay original for you?
I don't know. Let me look at these. I mean, I would be happy to see Zero Dark 30 win. I really love Denzel in Flight. I don't know that the screenplay particularly stood out for me, but I would like to see that movie get some recognition. And Amour, that's really an outside chance, especially because it was written in another language, which, as you observed in writing about the movie, seems like an odd... Has that ever happened?
They have done it a few times. Pedro Almodovar won the best screenplay.
For what movie? All About My Mother?
Her.
Talk to her.
Yeah. I mean, I'm totally in the tank for Moonrise Kingdom. I wrote about this. I think if we could only transport this room to the Academy, we'd have a winner. I think I totally sympathize with Dana's issue that some people are not going to like Wes's work. It's this very specific imaginative universe that he has created, but to me it's exquisitely rendered in that particular film. And his co-writer, Roman Coppola, the other Coppola child, Sophia's brother, should get a little bit of, he co-wrote the screenplay, and he should get some credit for that. And since they've been working together the last two movies, I think that Anderson has been able to pull back from some of the really obsessive, sort of hermetically sealed world of some of his earlier films. This felt like it had all the crazy stuff in it. The fact that they sent out and had Boy Scout tents made that looked almost like the real Boy Scout tents from the 1960s, but were not exactly the same. That's crazy. But the screenplay had a lot of real emotion in it, as well as a lot of real humor. I loved it. I agree that Argo will probably win, and I think that's a terrible film.
Oh, I can't believe that.
Well, wait, now we're on a different category. I think Django's going to win this category.
Django's
okay, so either one. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the actors and actresses. Let's start with Jack's question, which is the best supporting actress. I can tell you what I know. I can't remember the name of the woman in Silver Linings.
We've got them all here, don't worry.
Jackie Weaver.
Jackie Weaver, okay. All right, so let's have a show of hands for your choices are going to be Amy Adams, Anne Hathaway, Sally Field, Jackie Weaver, and Helen Hunt for Sessions. So let's have a show of hands for who thinks Amy Adams gave the best performance in the supporting category. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. Anne Hathaway in Les Mis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Very good. Okay, how about Sally Field in Lincoln? No, you only get one vote. All right, Sally Field. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, we're getting a tie here. Okay, how about Jackie Weaver in Silver Linings? She played the mother? Okay, then. And how about Helen Hunt in Sessions? For those of you who saw it, it's a wonderful movie. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very good. Okay, all right, so it's a tie for Anne Hathaway and Sally Field. I think we all know who's going to win, but who do you feel gave the best performance in this category?
We know that?
Well,
Are we going to sing again? Yes. Yeah. You're going to try to kill the dream that Anne Hathaway's dream?
I just have to tell you.
No, you can't do that.
All right, please go.
I would choose Sally Field. I think what she does in that, and I think in good measure because of Tony Kushner and Steven Spielberg, is not be Sally Field. I thought that she did something really subtle. There was nothing too much. I think she just got everything right. It was nuanced and really wonderful. Yeah. So much as I like Amy Adams in The Master as well, I would go with Sally Field.
And who do you think's going to win?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mike?
Well, nobody wants another Sally Field speech.
Oh, I do.
I'm serious. I do, because I wrote about that for 20 years. But... and she was very good. She didn't overplay the mental illness. She could have been in Silver Linings Playbook, too. Speaking of which, Jackie Weaver, everyone thought was Sally Struthers from All in the Family, right?
Oh, no.
But she happens to be like the Meryl Streep of Australia. She's a great actress. I didn't think she was given enough to do in that movie. I was amazed that Harvey got her the nomination because her performance is mainly a bunch of reaction shots. But I was glad Nicole... What?
Philadelphia.
Good, yes, good Philadelphia accent. Amy Adams is an extraordinary actress. This is her 4th nomination. She's the new Deborah Carr or something.
Yeah, right.
You know, she's really one of those reliable people who could do anything. I don't think she'll get it. I think obviously it's Anne Hathaway. I mean, it was an exhibitionistic performance, but she moved me. To do that live, I thought was an incredible achievement. She was better than Susan Boyle. She had to have her back teeth pulled out and roll around in the mud. She's going to win. I'm actually dreading her performance more than a Sally
her speech
more than a Sally Field speech, because she's a little too cute and a little too self-aware of how cute she is.
Okay, Dana.
Yeah, I actually think Jackie Weaver did really a lot with this, a little in Silver Linings Playbook, although I think Amy Adams would probably be my personal choice for this one. And Anne Hathaway, yeah, all I could think during that song, her big Dream to Dream song, was, I am getting an Oscar, I am nailing this song. You're just so aware of her awareness of the virtuosity of that performance that to me it was a boring moment in the movie, but she did nail the song.
All right. Okay.
You know,
Andrew.
I'm somebody who can cry at a well-constructed, camera commercial. So I definitely, Anne Hathaway totally got me. I did have tears running down my cheeks when that song was over. So I'm in your Frank sentimental camp at times.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when it was over, I felt manipulated. I felt like, boy, this was, this was really just sticking a fork in me. And I think Amy Adams, as Michael said, is turning into one of those actors who's just always interesting. She's interesting in every role, and she's interesting in a different way in every role, and she's interesting in every shot.
Yeah.
She turned a role that in the script for The Master, probably seemed pretty minor, and is in the background behind the two guys. And she really seems like this strange, partly maternal, partly erotic Machiavelli who's moving the pieces around on the board in this way. I thought that was a really key part to the mysterious power of that movie, and I would definitely give it to her.
Okay, cool.
I also love Michael calling her the new Deborah Carr. That's great.
Yeah, really.
Now I want her to be in a remake of Turn of the Screw.
I have no problem with Sally. Sally Field was great.
You know what? Helen Hunt was terrific too.
Yeah.
And we didn't even mention how John Hawkes is not nominated for the
Yes,
session,
there's a snub.
which is...
Yeah, okay. All right, moving along. Now we have this amazing category of all Oscar winners. For Best Supporting Actor, we have Alan Arkin in Argo, Robert De Niro in Silver Linings, Phil Hoffman in The Master, Tommy Lee Jones in Lincoln, and Christoph Waltz in Django Unchained. A show of hands, please, for the singular achievement in this category. Alan Arkin in Argo. 1. Okay, it's a great performance. How about Robert De Niro in Silver Linings? Okay. 3, 4, 5. Thank you. How about Philip Seymour Hoffman in The Master? Kind of a lead performance as well, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. How about Tommy Lee Jones in Lincoln? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, okay. And how about Christoph Waltz in Django? Almost a lead again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Okay. All right. Well, so now this is a fairly significant split, except Phil Hoffman has a clear majority here in terms of Best Supporting. Who's did the best job and who's going to get it?
Well, what you said was that he's the master.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that's a supporting performance, as great as it is. And when I think Christoph Waltz exits Django, so does the movie go. You know, something is missing after that. And given that that's who they are, Robert De Niro hasn't basically been good for 20 years, and so that the Academy loves that idea. He's back. He's doing something. He looked like he actually read the script and might have actually studied it. So that can happen. And I would say that I think they're going to give it to Christoph Waltz, even though he's given that performance and won an Oscar for giving basically the same performance in Inglourious Basterds. But I would, just on the basis of who is the best, it's Philip Seymour Hoffman. It's just that scene where he sings on a slow boat to China to Joaquin alone in that room. I don't know what was happening there, but I can't get it out of my head.
Michael.
I agree, Hoffman. In fact, I feel Hoffman was the only one of those 5 who wasn't giving a performance that he could do in his sleep. The other 4 were enjoyable and fun, but there was nothing revelatory about any of those 4. Christoph Waltz is the lead of Django Unchained. Do not be fooled by his category. He was lobbied for supporting because he wouldn't have won lead, and now he's a front runner to win supporting. Similarly, Django was up for drama for the drama desk. It's a comedy. Did any of those nominators watch it? It is a comedy. I feel Alan Arkin just gives an Alan Arkin performance. De Niro, yeah, okay, at least it's not Rocky and Bullwinkle, so let's give him a nomination. Christoph Waltz, like you said, same performance as Inglourious Bastards. Tommy Lee Jones, same performance. He lost a lot of points with that nasty expression he had on the Golden Globes when Will Ferrell and Kristen Wiig were making fun of Hope Springs.
Right.
But everyone knows he's a prick, so that's nothing new. I'm sorry he's not a nice person.
Okay, so
not like me.
It's still
So I'm going to say Christoph is going to get it because he's been building steam.
okay. Dan?
Yeah, this is a wide open field. For me, all of those performances I thought were great, and I wouldn't be sorry to see any of those people win an award. Although it is true that we've seen Alan Arkin do that kind of character many times, but he's so funny. I just loved his scenes in Argo. I felt like the scenes with him and John Goodman were the tone that I wish the whole movie could have struck in a way.
He also, just to interrupt, he has a moment that has no lines. It isn't just funny. It's when they're trying to convince him to do it. And he said, no, I can't. I got to go to an award show. I'm busy. I'm busy. And then he sees it on TV. And the whole movie is in that moment. There's no lines. He just looks at what these people are up against in captivity, and it's all in his face. And that's the inciting incident of the movie. That's when the movie gets going. So anyway, I just want to add that. Go ahead. No
yeah,
lines.
that's basically it. I think Christoph Waltz seems like probably a shoo-in, and Philip Seymour Hoffman's probably my favorite, but any one of these guys would make a fun speech, and I think they would deserve the award.
Okay.
I wouldn't be shocked or disappointed if they gave it to De Niro. I do think that's actually a good performance, especially now we are comparing it, as a couple of you have noted, we are comparing it to a long, dry period in this guy's career. I had the misfortune of seeing a movie he was in that was at Sundance last year in which he plays the blind psychic. Did any of you see that movie?
No.
That's really, I think it's called Red Lights, with Cillian Murphy in it. That's really one of the worst pictures ever made. He plays the blind psychic who turns out to just be faking it the whole time because he's not blind. So he can indeed read the quarter that you have in your hand because he can see. So it's really stupid. And I felt like this was a film where he was paying attention and he made a role that could have just been this sort of Italian-American joke character who's the decaying bookie with OCD into a guy who seemed like he had some real tangled and painful emotions going on. So I have a sort of sentimental desire to see that come through, but I would agree, Hoffman's performance is on another level in The Master, clearly, and that's not a supporting performance. It's ridiculous to call it that. Christoph Waltz is a great actor who is just, unfortunately, his relationship with Tarantino right now seems to be about repeating shtick that he's already done. And
Okay. All right. Now let's have a look at actor and actress. Let's look at actor first. We have Bradley Cooper in Silver Linings Playbook, Daniel Day-Lewis in Lincoln, Hugh Jackman in Les Mis, Joaquin Phoenix in The Master, and Denzel Washington in Flight. Bradley Cooper. How about how about Denzel Washington? How about Joaquin Phoenix? Okay. Oh, we got some. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 8. Thank you for showing me that. Okay, 8. How about Hugh Jackman and Les Mis? 1, 2. Okay. And how about Daniel Day-Lewis and Lincoln? Okay, I'm not going to add, but I think that's a majority. Okay, so please. Anyone want to say anything one way or another?
Joaquin and Daniel Day were both brilliant. Joaquin would get the edge in my vote, but he's not popular. He didn't campaign. The movie divides people, and it didn't make money. Daniel Day-Lewis is a lock.
He didn't only not campaign, he said it was all bull. He came, I mean, he said what a lot of other actors actually believe, but they didn't go on there to do it. And I think they have a kind of respect for him for doing it.
He has nothing left to lose after I'm Still Here, after that experiment with Ben Affleck. Now he can just say whatever shit he wants. He just he gives the craziest and best interviews now. I love to read Joaquin Phoenix interviews because he will say anything.
Cool. Okay, would we, anybody want to say anything other than Daniel Day-Lewis? For the best performance, not just because he's going to win.
I would go with Joaquin.
Yeah, you went with Joaquin, I know.
And I would too.
You would?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
I'm fine with Daniel Day-Lewis. I think it's, considering the level of difficulty, I think it's the best work of his career.
Yeah, I think that is one of those occasions when you were talking about, isn't it ever about recognizing excellence? People seem to agree, yep, you did it, Daniel Day. That's a great performance of a great script, and, he just carried the day.
Okay. All right, let's look at leading actress. We have Jessica Chastain in Zero Dark 30, Jennifer Lawrence in Silver Linings Playbook, Emmanuel Riva in Amour. Michael?
Oh, I think Jennifer Lawrence.
Pronounce.
Okay. Sorry. Kavenjane Wallace. Pronounced Sade.
Should be.
Berbice and Naomi Watts in The Impossible. Okay, show of hands for the best performance, Jessica Chastain in Zero Dark. Thank you. 5. Okay, how about Jennifer Lawrence in Silver Linings Playbook? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. How about Emmanuel Riva in Amour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. Recognizing that, Jean-Louis Trintignant is in every scene, but was not nominated. I mean, that's an astonishing performance opposite her. Okay. Michael?
Something. Kavenjane Wallace.
Okay. Beast. Best performance from Beast. Excellent. 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. Okay. And Naomi Watts in The Impossible, which so few people saw. I'm glad you did, though. 1. Okay. All right.
2.
So the vote is 2. I'm sorry. Was there another one?
I think I saw 2. Yeah.
Okay, 2. Excellent. All right. So the gang has voted for Emmanuel Riva. Which is
this is a good room.
It is a good room.
Yeah.
Well, these are people who care about movies. That's why they're here. Okay, so who gave the best performance and who's going to win?
I think Emmanuel Riva did give the best performance. And the idea that I would never have said this when the movie first opened, that she has this real shot at winning it. That's kind of amazing. Yeah. And I really think, since everybody's seen it, the reason that she's nominated and Jean-Louis Trintignant is not is because she dies. It
happens.
And
yes.
they like that in the Academy. They they really want to sympathize with that character. But Jennifer Lawrence is her competition, and she is the Golden Girl. She's the princess. She's the Hunger Games. She's been nominated before. She's only 22, but she's been nominated for Winter's Bone. She has the chops. She can do it, and that's a real contest.
Okay. So that's the contest.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael, please.
Well, by Kavenjane standards, Jennifer Lawrence is really old. Let's face it. She's like Emmanuel Riva. I would be happy with Jennifer Lawrence winning. I thought she was superb. I thought she played an impossible character, one of those dark angels who says inappropriate things, like he's harassing me when he's not, and I'm the slut with a dead husband, and has outbursts and does things that seem to be hurting you, but they're really for the best, because they aim to make you a better person. She pulled it off. Yeah. Emmanuel Riva, it does piss me off that Jean-Louis Trintignant didn't get one nomination for anything. He dominates the film. She lays there having a stroke most of the movie. Similarly, Naomi Watts, in a terrible movie called The Impossible, lays there with an oxygen mask on for most of the film. That's a rotten piece of work. About rich people trying to find each other in the tsunami as the incidental Thai people stand around watching. It was pathetic. Am I alone here?
Okay, Dana?
But anyway, who do
you think is going to win?
I thought Kavenjane gave maybe the best performance I've ever seen by a child, but they never give Best Actress to a child. She's the first real nominee who was a child. So, no, that was supporting. Yeah. She was the lead, but she won supporting.
Right. Okay.
So I'm happy with Jennifer.
Good.
I haven't seen The Impossible yet.
I haven't either.
And I probably won't at this point because I've heard so many people say the equivalent of what Michael just said about it. I would be perfectly fine with seeing Jennifer Lawrence win, but this is one of the few categories where I actually have an investment. I want Emmanuelle Riva to win. I want to hear her speech. It would be really nice to see her get recognized. As for the Jean-Louis Trintignant not being recognized, in my review of Amour, I talked about how they are almost two parts of a dyad. It's like one performance done by two people, in the same way that Philip Seymour Hoffman and Joaquin Phoenix work off each other in The Master, but in a way even more, it really is a two-person show with the two of them. So it is sort of a travesty that she would be recognized and not him, but, you're going to ask the Oscar for that much recognition of a French movie about a dying 85-year-old? It's incredible that movie got the recognition it did, so.
Cool. I think you said there was more Amour than you thought there was going to be for Amour.
Yeah, I'm not usually a Haneke fan. I think a lot of people who are not Michael Haneke fans came around with that movie because it was the first time we didn't feel that he was, sadistically bludgeoning the audience with the spectacle. Okay, Andrew, please.
I actually am divided here for a lot of reasons that have already come up. I think Emmanuelle Riva is, she's the person who dies. She's the emotional centerpiece. She has to play the thing that all of us either are going to deal with personally ourselves and our own bodies, or deal with older relatives. That prospect of getting old and getting sick and dying, it's the most universal experience you can possibly imagine. And her rendering of it is very, very it's completely fearless. So I think that's a really great performance. I'd be delighted if it won. On the other side of it, I think that, Jennifer Lawrence really does a lot with a film that where I felt that the screenplay was kind of all over the place and took a lot of risks, and the character, as Michael said, is just not very well delineated and is kind of a cliche in some ways. And she really made that young woman seem real and alive. And she does a lot of different things and a lot of different scenes in the movie. Now clearly she's going to get more chances. So I think she probably will win, and I'm basically okay with that. I would love to be surprised by seeing Emmanuelle Riva out there.
Okay. All right. Home stretch here. Now let's take a look at director. We have talked about that a great deal tonight. We've also talked about snubs for director, but our nominees, your choices are, well, there are no names here, but Michael Haneke for Amour, Ben Zeitlin for Beasts, Ang Lee for Life of Pi, Steven Spielberg for Lincoln, and David O. Russell for Silver Linings Playbook. Recognizing that there's certain important names that aren't there, a show of hands for who feels that Amour was the best directorial achievement of the year. 1, 2. Excellent. Okay. Beasts of the Southern Wild. Oh, wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Excellent. Okay. Life of Pi. Certainly an achievement. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. Lincoln. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oops. 9 for Lincoln. And Silver Linings Playbook. 1. Just the 1. Okay. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so with this group, Lincoln wins, but a close second of Beasts. Who should win? What's the best achievement, and who will win?
Well, I still would be voting for Catherine Bigelow, but you won't let me. So I'm going to say that Steven Spielberg will win and be in the same position he is back when he won for Saving Private Ryan, but the best picture was Shakespeare in Love.
Oh, something else,
It's something else. I don't know how that makes you feel when that happens to you enough times. But just to say a word in his behalf, because he seems, as Argo has marginalized Lincoln through all of these last few weeks, I think the combination of Spielberg and Tony Kushner is a really good one.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he hasn't really gotten credit for that. It was, well, we expect like the landing of a mothership or something. Yeah. We didn't get that in this. Just the way he began it with Lincoln on the floor with his son would be in a Spielberg movie without Tony Kushner maybe too sentimental. But that yin and yang, that thing that was happening with them, I think that really works. So I would give it to him, and I say he's going to win.
Cool. Michael.
Well, Ang Lee also won director for Brokeback Mountain and didn't get Best Picture. Crash won, remember that year? Yeah. So that could happen again for him.
Right.
It's a weird divide when they do that, but you have to take what you're given. I thought Ang Lee did a terrific job, obviously, in adapting Life of Pi. My personal choice would be Ben Zeitlin. because that was a directorial vision come to life. I think Spielberg is going to get it just because of the residual good feelings about Lincoln and the fact that we should give it something besides just Best Actor.
Yeah, okay. Dana.
I guess I agree with Peter. I think Spielberg will win and probably should win. I have a little bit of a desire to block directors in this category because although I love Ang Lee's work, I don't think Life of Pi is really Oscar worthy at all. It feels to me like it's a great technical achievement. Yes. It's beautiful looking, but I've never entered into the story in any way. And I would also sort of want to block Ben Zeitlin because I'm not a Beast of the Southern Wild fan. But I don't think Ben Zeitlin has a chance in hell anyway, and he's lucky to be on that roster. And even though I'm not a Beast of the Southern Wild fan, I think it's good that it's out there in the ecosystem. Like, I think it's a great thing for filmmaking that somebody who is so completely outside of Hollywood managed to get this much recognition and that big of an audience.
Yes, excellent. Okay, Andrew.
I mean, I completely agree with the. I think Spielberg is the likely winner in this category, and I don't have a huge problem with that, given the difficulty of what he had to work with and the fact that, yes, as Peter says, working with Kushner seems to rein in the sentimental excess that Spielberg is sometimes given to. Okay. And he really needs a strong screenplay and responds to one. And there's this alternate current of Spielberg movies that are less sentimental than the really treacly ones about kids. Certainly include Munich and AI. And what was the one with Tom Cruise, whose name I'm not remembering right now? Minority Report, yeah. And this, I think, fits a pattern in his career of making better movies when he has really good scripts to work with. That said, I think that I am personally in the tank for Michael Haneke, just as a director who comes from a completely different tradition, who works in a sort of collaborative scene creation way that's a little different, and is a figure from world cinema who's never going to get any respect in Hollywood other than this one time with this one film. So I'd love to see that happen, and it won't.
All right, the climax, the final. This is where you put the road hits the rubber. The rubber hits the road. Best Picture. Your choices are Amour, Argo, Beasts of the Southern Wild, Django Unchained, Les Mis, Life of Pi, Lincoln, Silver Linings Playbook, and Zero Dark 30. In alphabetical order, may I have a show of hands? The best picture of the year ought to be, and is the greatest achievement, Amour. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And you just made Andrew very happy. Okay, all right, Argo. We've certainly beaten everybody into submission on that tonight.
Nobody?
I don't really, does anybody want to vote for Argo, please? Yeah. One. There, brave right, soul. Okay. Beasts of the Southern Wild. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. Excellent. Okay. Django Unchained. 1, 2, 3. Very good. 3. Okay. Les Mis. Be brave. If you really liked it. That's a big 0. Okay.
A lot of straight people here.
Life of Pi. Life of Pi? 1. Okay, excellent. All right, Lincoln. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Very good. And Silver Linings Playbook. Okay. And Zero Dark 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so in our universe, the big winner is Lincoln with a close-ish second of Zero Dark 30. Okay, please. This is the climax of the evening.
Zero Dark 30. I would choose that. Okay. Because you won't let me pick The Master because it's not nominated. But I'm saying Zero Dark 30, I think, is a movie that will stick around, that it will live, that it's, again, what I was saying about Lincoln, which I would pick second to that, is that sense of a script with a director who sees things in a visual way, that you can't watch the end of that movie with Jessica Chastain's face and think you just saw a brochure for the CIA. You know, wow, this is really what I want to do and what I want to be. Yeah. And that just, they work together to achieve something great, and I would choose that.
And what do you think is going to win?
Oh, Argo.
Argo's going to win, okay. All right, Michael?
Who cares what I think, but obviously Argo is going to win. And I think it's the second year in a row where people, years from now, are going to go, really? You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, but what would you vote is the best?
I would go with Beasts, but that has no chance.
Okay. All right, Dana?
Yeah, I guess if I could choose Zero Dark 30 or Lincoln, either one equal, I'd toss a coin between those two. More would be great, but that's a complete long shot. And I guess if you're to believe all the Oscar gossip blogs, Argo is a lock, but that seems weird and depressing.
Yeah, okay. Andrew?
I mean, it would be a major upset at this point if Argo did not win Best Picture. Everyone inside and around the business would be shocked. That's not to say it's impossible. Roger Ebert thinks that Silver Linings Playbook is going to win. I don't know where he's getting that from. That seems more far-fetched than these other options that we're talking about. But what we see in this room is that it's going to be, it probably was a pretty close vote. They're all done with the voting now. I imagine that they're going to have to knock out the number 9 and knock out the number 8, and eventually, before they get to a 50% winner, it's going to take a while. I do think that Argo will win. I'm afraid that the prognosticators are correct. If I were voting, I would probably vote for Amour, because the way it works is there's no downside in voting for one picture. But I would certainly like to see Lincoln get or Zero Dark 30 get this acknowledgement ahead of Argo.
Yeah.
We didn't say, and it's a really interesting point about Ben Affleck and about how this Oscar year is about him.
What a good guy.
It's like poor Ben. He can't, win for losing. He didn't get nominated by 371. That's how many people were in the Directors Guild that decided on those 5.
Director's category.
In that category, they picked it. If Ben Affleck can win the DGA because there's thousands of them. There's a lot of people in there. I don't know what the Academy is doing to those 371 that they're saying, what were you guys thinking? We're picking a different 371 next year. But they have marketed that loss into a vote for Argo is a vote for Ben.
Yeah.
It's just become this whole thing like we need to carry him on our shoulders.
Didn't he get a standing ovation at some award show right after he was nominated?
Yeah. That goes back to what Andrew said, both to us and in print, that it's a trade show. It's an insular self-congratulatory thing, and he's in the in crowd this year. Yes.
Do you think it still would be such a strong front runner for Best Picture if you had gotten it for director and they had a way to vote for him there?
I think it would have been a much closer contest. I really would. If he got the nomination as Best Director, I think they would be thinking it through a little more.
I agree.
Now,
we would be sitting here really wondering who was going to win.
Yeah.
I think Lincoln would be in a much stronger position.
I agree with that.
Saying that loss of losing a directing nomination is basically what marginalized Lincoln. It happened. If that was a campaign, and I think it was, we often talk about skullduggery in this world and what Harvey Weinstein does, but he's not alone in the world. And a lot of those companies are just going out there, and I don't think Ben Affleck is naive about how the process works. So I think that he's basically been out there saying, poor me.
Yeah.
I think I think you're absolutely right. This is a lot about his basic likability. Unfortunately, it's more about his likability than about his talent as a director, I think, which is sort of above average, but not amazing.
We used to make lots of movies like that.
Yeah.
One more?
I have a really good question.
Please.
I keep hearing Harvey Weinstein. I'm currently interning at the Weinstein Company, but I still don't understand how much say does a production company have on the voting process.
Well, he's not a company. He's like a force of nature. So you're really close to him to do that. I think that what he will do is that he knows who Academy voters are individually. He knows how to send them the screeners. He knows how to schmooze them. He knows how to put little things in their ears sometimes about other movies that he would like you to think aren't really that good. I don't think that Harvey is really fond of Argo. And he would try to work that. And you know what? It's manipulative, it's weird, it's strange, and yet it brings, it's like, to me, bringing a kind of vulgar life back to an industry that could become just a business. In his heart, if it's there, and you could tell us when you spend a little more time with him. Yes, you come back and see this. I think he really cares about movies. I think he really does. He and Scott Rudin are two of, people would call them the monsters of the universe, and yet they really care. And so I like their care.
This is the ultimate in retail politics. It's like all this money and all this time and all this sort of this genius firepower is poured into an election where the electorate is like for a city in Arkansas that isn't Little Rock or Fort Smith. You know, it's like 6,000. What did you? 6,000 people. I actually think it's less than that, but.
In the, I just meant in all the, that's what I got.
Academy.
6,000, yeah.
Okay, there was one more, you, and then I think we're going to have to call it a day. Please?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there were any other films you guys have been saying about how those are like, if there are any other films that haven't been mentioned that you guys think people will be looking at and finding interesting still, 50 years along with Holy Motors, that hasn't been mentioned at all, and I thought it was great. Yeah, I don't know.
It was. I would mention that immediately, you know, and it's, sometimes we're told that these are critics' movies, that it's something we see because we see everything. And nobody really gets the opportunity to see them. People where I work at Rolling Stone, there's no opportunity. It doesn't play in their town. They say, what are you talking about? They make a note about it, but then it's gone and they forget about it. But that is another tremendous filmmaker. I mean, you guys have...
Yeah, Holy Motors seems like something that people will talk about, and certainly in Leo Carax's career retrospective, that would be one of the, I think it would be one of the gems. I think it's one of my favorite of his movies that I've seen. Also, Once Upon a Time in Anatolia was a fantastic movie from early this year, a Turkish movie that is not at all the kind of thing that will get recognition at the Oscars. It's extremely long, it's extremely quiet, but it's completely worth seeing if you haven't. I don't know, what other titles? It seems so long ago.
Well, those movies bring up the whole foreign language category, which is insane. And it's about the Academy being insane about that, where the country of origin, which is often not even the country of origin, gets to choose one. So if Turkey happened to make 4 good movies, sorry, you know, they're not in contention because we listen to what the country says instead of looking at it. It might be a year where all 5 of the best movies came from France. So why can't we do that? But the Academy says it's not fair.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really key point. That basically with the Oscars, we're talking about the American film industry with a few other things that get leavened in for good measure to kind of spice it up. It happens that Amour is a really good movie that almost for demographic reasons, you know, came to the attention of the Academy this year and is getting all this love. But certainly international cinema brings all kinds of, there's Holy Motors, there's Once Upon a Time in Anatolia, which is like a 3-hour episode of CSI in Turkish, written by Chekhov.
Advancing frame by frame, very slowly.
And then there's, you know, one of my favorite films this year was Andrea Arnold's adaptation of Wuthering Heights, one of the strangest literary adaptations ever made. It's true in many ways to the spirit of the book, but you're not going to see it on Masterpiece Theater. There's a whole world, but because of the way the Oscars are constructed, they're not even going to, you know, be considered, as Peter says.
Okay, we have one more question here.
I just wanted to say maybe that other people think
The Master. Yeah, that's it. I get so many people. There was one person that came up to me on the street and he said, I read your review of The Master, and I said, well, that's nice. And he said, no, it's not. Everything you said is just a complete lie. I went with 4 of my friends, and we came out and we said to each other, did you understand that? And everybody just looked at each other. And he said, well, what do you say to that? And I said, it would have been great if you all 4 had gone out for a cup of coffee and talked about what you didn't understand. That's what worries me about movies in general, or any art form or any craft that there is. That if something disturbs you or hits you in some way, why don't you go on and talk about what you don't understand with other people? Because I think that's a great way to exchange ideas about it. Otherwise, we're going to get nothing but Argos. And I'm saying Argo again, we've all said this. Perfectly fine. There should be a dozen movies like that every year where we can just go and have a good time and relax with it and see a Hollywood movie. But these movies that are special, there's a rejection of them because they don't fit into a certain form. And I think that's a sad thing that's continuing. I see more and more of it.
Anyone else?
Did you have a...
So you wanted to know contenders?
that you like that everyone else hates.
Everybody else hated. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good one for 2012.
Try the Turin horse.
I mean,
There we go.
yeah.
I like this movie called Take This Waltz by Sarah Polley,
That's a great film.
which nobody else was that enthusiastic about.
people were
That's a
divided
great
on it. I was actually going to cite that one too. Take This Waltz was great, and I think Sarah Polley's a huge talent. Don't you agree? I think she's
Yeah,
gonna do
and
better
Michelle
than
Williams
anything.
was tremendous.
Yeah.
As far as what are the worst that everyone can agree on as being rotten, Dark Shadows, Battleship, and The Paperboy. And anything with Tyler Perry.
I sort of liked Will Ferrell and Casa de Mi Padre, if we're going to go down that route.
That was on my worst list.
Andrew, do you have something to contribute?
No, that's good. Casa de Mi Padre is a good note to end on. It's probably objectively really terrible, but I think felt like I was back in Andy Kaufman territory. It's that and Les Mis were my two secret delights.
Yeah, that's a good example of a movie. You can only admit to yourself how much you really liked it.
Well, in our universe, if we were the Academy, it's a pretty fabulous year. I think everyone seemed to embrace Lincoln and The Master, though it was not on our list, that Lincoln is going to win Best Picture. It's going to get Adapted Screenplay. It's going to get Best Director. It's going to tie for Best Supporting Actress. We had a very good evening tonight for Steven Spielberg. We acknowledged Moonrise Kingdom, which may not happen, so that's to our credit, I think. We certainly acknowledged Emmanuel Riva. We like Jennifer Lawrence, but we acknowledged Emmanuel Riva. We acknowledged that Phil Hoffman is basically the lead in The Master, which he really is. And we felt good about acknowledging that Daniel Day-Lewis gave the Performance of the Year. So if it were just up to us, what a great industry we'd have.
So according to the Oscars, we're all delusional.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We're going to be entirely disappointed on Sunday night, but that doesn't mean that we didn't care deeply. So I just want to thank you guys for being a fabulous audience, and thank our critics who are not.